Welcome to our Q&A number 11. We've got some great questions, so let's dive in. Question number 1, I am pregnant with number 2 and have a 2-year-old. I was working on healing from first pregnancy birth, had lots of pelvic floor and core dysfunction. Now I'm starting again. I'm wondering how often is it okay to try to work on my deep core during pregnancy? Every day. Also, any tips for things to keep in mind when running and picking up a 2-year-old? Thanks so much. I love your informative content so much. Oh, yay. I'm so glad the content is helpful. All right, so let's dive into a couple things that can help you here. It's hard. That second kid is hard. At least it was for me. Maybe it's easy for a lot of moms, but for me it was really, really hard. Adding a second child to the mix was exponentially harder than having the first kid for me. So I want you to just be aware of that and go into especially the second postpartum period with a lot of awareness. But let me go back to pregnancy and then we'll come back to that. All right, so you can work your deep inner core system as much as your body will allow. So our deep inner core system is more endurance based, which means it needs to work a lot. But if you work too much, then you can increase your risk of tightness. We do not want you to have pelvic floor tightness going into delivery. Okay, you might imagine why that would not work out well. So what you want to do is you want to work your deep inner core system within your bounds of developing tightness. I tend to see people with more TA tightness tend to expand more in the front, which can increase stress on diastasis. Not something I have research to back up, just something I've seen from clinical experience. So take that for what you will. And I have seen people, with pelvic floor tightness that can increase difficulty with delivery or maybe increase risk of tearing. So not working to the point of creating tightness is important, but working to the point of increasing muscle to meet demand is very important. So I recommend you work maybe closely with a women's health PT in your area that can help figure out what's right for your body. Women's health PTs can do internal pelvic floor work during pregnancy, so they can check to make sure that the tightness isn't happening. Maybe just a checkup, especially when you get a little closer to delivery time. I think that would be good. So along those lines, that the amount that you can do, even every day, is completely up to your body. And some people can only work on that deep core system a couple times a week, and then they notice increased tightness. Some people work on it 5 times a day, and they're like, my body is still so lax, Sarah, and it's so hypotonic, basically like low tone, that no matter what I do, I can't seem to get it ramped up and increase tightness. So this is why one size never fits all. And I've noticed there's such a big spectrum with women for how much they can handle, which then impacts moving forward. I am sure genetics plays a role in that, as well as exercise history and kind of what your life has been through. All right, so the other thing I really want you to keep in mind is that pressure management matters when you're pregnant as well. So you can, as the baby grows, it changes how you handle pressure, like where that pressure goes when you try to get off the couch or pick up your toddler, and just be careful that as you grow and change, that you don't start bearing down as a compensation pattern. So just being aware of what's happening at your pelvic floor, because bearing down can cause issues. A lot of prolapse is caused during pregnancy, not necessarily during the delivery or the postpartum period. And then I think part of the reason why that is because patterns change and adaptations happen, and if you adapt by bearing down, putting pressure down, or putting pressure out on the diastasis to generate force to be able to do something that's a little bit hard, then that can increase your risk of those pressure management problems. So being acutely aware of your pressure management through your pregnancy is also very great. So just making sure you're not bearing down, making sure you don't see a lot of doming or distension happening out of your diastasis, like when you try to get up from places. So you can just be mindful of that. The other thing I really want to reiterate that I was talking about in the beginning is the postpartum period. The baby itself was so much easier for me personally the second time around, because you're like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm not quite as nervous about being a first-time mom. But managing the toddler was very challenging because, at least for me, it ended up with more baby wearing, having to be forced activity to keep up with a toddler. And a toddler is like, hey, catch me while I jump off of something. And you're just like, oh, I wasn't ready for that. My pelvic floor wasn't ready. My core wasn't ready. My body wasn't ready to handle this very active toddler that I could handle pregnant, but I'm not having trouble. So just be aware of that, and just really try to take care of your body and listen to your body during this period, and give yourself lots of grace and time for rehabbing that, and just be careful doing a little too much too soon, because it is tough, you know, trying to keep up with that second kid and being forced into lots of movement. Okay, so hopefully that gave you some ideas for this time period, but I know it's hard, and I know you're going to keep going, and I do think you continue to improve throughout your pregnancy. You don't have to wait until you're done in your postpartum to start all over again. So I do think that you continue to improve, especially with strength gains. Okay, question number 2. Currently doing your DR fix again after my 8th baby. I fixed a prolapse with your program, and it's been life-changing. I would really like to start climbing once I've gotten this core in shape. Any tips for getting muscles in shape for climbing? I think this is an amazing question. And 8th baby, wow, you are amazing. You could probably give some more advice to the person in question number 1 than I could after having 8 kids. All right, so, and the fact that you want to start climbing, that you feel like you have the time and the mental space, is truly amazing. So let's get you there. Okay, so awesome. This is going to be such an easy answer since you're already in the Diastasis Fix program. So recommend going through the whole thing again, because we're going to go over breathing, body positioning. You remember all of that, posture, movement, just kind of getting that base. And then once you get that, I want you to hop into the bonus workouts. So I've added new workouts to the Diastasis program since the last time that you've done it. And the third bonus workout, they go in order of difficulty. And the third bonus workout is quite challenging. All right, so make sure you master 1, master 2, and then when you move into that third bonus workout, it's going to be hard. And I think a lot of that is going to carry over really well to climbing. Okay, the other thing I would work on for climbing is I would work on leg strength, particularly hamstring and glute strength. It's a lot of posterior chain pulling, so you're not pushing. So with how you approach that climbing, I think can either be very helpful for your core rehab, or it can create a little bit of excessive stress. So kind of be mindful of that. Lots of pulling. And, you know, just continue to get stronger, ease in, start easy, and work your way up. And I think you're going to be really great. This is awesome. So have a lot of fun climbing. That's wonderful. Question number 3, my posture is awful. I saw an ad for one of those posture correctors and was wondering what you thought of them. Do you have any tips for working on my posture that I could try instead of the corrector? Okay, so first off, things don't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be just a posture corrector or just working on posture. You could do both if you want, but my opinion on posture correctors is I like to think of correcting anything in the body as both a passive approach and an active approach. So all the way from maybe when we think about binders, or we think about arch support in your shoes, we think about crutches, like things helping to hold us up and support us, are passive, meaning somebody or something is doing something to your body. This is a passive approach. Now, I find passive approaches tend not to gain traction over time. They're passive. Sometimes you need a little bit of a passive approach, like manual therapy, somebody working on the muscle tightness, the soft tissue, remolding, opening, helping to adjust your posture for you. But it often doesn't hold because your active system has to support the passive systems you put in place. So whether your passive system is some kind of brace, whether your passive system is going and getting manual therapy where we open everything up and straighten you up and work on your head and neck and tension everywhere. It sounds lovely, doesn't it? Oh, I miss manual work. So one thing I want you to think about with that is that you have to be strong enough to hold these corrections, and you have to be strong enough to make that change. So I would highly recommend working on mid-back strength, working on serratus strength, lower traps, middle traps, lifting multiple days a week. We've got to get you stronger in all those muscles that help support your posture. Front of your neck needs a lot of strength, okay? So if we're gonna move you back from forward head posture, which when people generally say they have bad posture, I almost automatically assume that means forward head posture. Front of neck muscles, I would also love to take a look at your hip flexors. All right, so I find tightened flexors can really do a number for pulling, which can disrupt that just effort that you're putting forth sometimes if they're not addressed. Glute strength, you're sitting in your pelvis. Okay, so kind of what does your pelvis look like? And what is your upper body kind of sitting in? That brings us all the way down to feet. So I feel like posture is one of these fluid strength things where you need to address a lot of areas to really tackle it moving forward. But if that is overwhelming, which sometimes it can be, I want you to focus a lot on building mid-back strength. And in order to gain muscle, you have to overload. You have to have a demand on a muscle that's so high that the muscle says, whoa, I need to adapt to this. If you kind of just go through the motions and kind of do the exercise, but it doesn't feel difficult, or difficult is probably a bad word, it doesn't feel challenging to your muscles, it just feels like you kind of go through the motion, you're not going to adapt, you're not going to go anywhere, you're going to stay right where you are. Okay, so our body needs challenge to overcome, which lifting, getting stronger, working out can be that challenge where your body has to rise to the occasion and has to build muscle, and then that adapts over time and you get stronger, and then before you know it, you're like, I feel pretty good supporting myself with decent posture. All right, so hopefully that was some helpful tips. Thank you so much for joining me this week for our Q&A.